Welcome to Curious Creatives. This is our first interview with Curiocity. I caught up with Kiara earlier this week to talk about her illustration, her creative process, and I'm really excited to share this interview with you. So thanks for joining us, Kiara.
No problem.
Could you tell us a little bit about your work to start off with?
I work mainly with a mixture of hand-drawn elements and digital drawings, I guess.
It's sort of like mixed media work?
Some of my works are mixed media. The way I work with illustrations, I mean, it does vary from job to job, or if it's a personal job, it'll just sort of be whatever feels right at the time. But I like to kind of work by hand-drawing things in a sketchbook or just on, some nice paper, some textured paper, and then scanning elements in, including lettering as well, and then sort of using digital tools to layer them together. And for me, it just feels like a really kind of convenient way to work, as well as a way that just kind of suits my aesthetic, I guess, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so it means that I can kind of like fix up any little mistakes that come through in the hand-drawn process, but it means that the works don't look too slick and overdone. Like, they still have a kind of, a little bit of imperfection and wonkiness to them, which is what I love about hand-drawn illustrations in the first place.
Yeah, that brings me to like my next question, which is sort of more about your style. How would you describe your, the outcome of your work in terms of its style?
That's a tricky question. I mean, I've said it a few times before. I think that my style is kind of a little bit childlike in a way, like quite kind of naive and childlike, but then with a bit of sometimes there's a bit of a quirk or a twist to my work that gives it a little bit of an edge in a weird way, even though my works are quite soft and feminine and kind of a bit whimsical sometimes. There's also a little bit of a weirdness that I hope comes through.
Following on from this question, I asked Kiara if she could give us an example of what she meant by weird, and this is what she had to say.
A recent illustration that I did of Tony Abbott as an onion, which I enjoyed creating, based on an article that I had read about him biting into an onion. I just couldn't get that image out of my head. So, yeah, that's a perfect example of something that's a bit whimsical and weird at the same time.
In terms of that, do you find a lot of your ideas just kind of pop into your head, or does it involve some initial research? Where do your ideas tend to come from?
It varies. I definitely spend a lot of time looking at other illustrators' works, a lot of time looking at photography that I find inspiring, even, music lyrics that sort of just keep coming up again and again, and I kind of think, oh, there's like an image there or something that I could use. It really, has something to sort of stick in your head. And I guess also, on a more, not so much being directly inspired by this, but just having space to not be thinking about artworks and not be thinking about work is often where the best ideas come up. So, just going for walks and, not thinking about the next design job or anything like that. That's often when little images might pop into my head.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, because I've been finding that going on a morning walk is when my brain really starts working, and then I start getting ideas, especially in that kind of initial iterative stage where you've got sort of that initial seed of an idea, but you don't know where it's going yet.
Absolutely. And I think it's a common thing, even when you were just saying it then, especially when you've got that first little spark or seed, it's almost like your mind needs to have that room to sort of ramble, just like a physical walk is your body kind of, rambling around and in an open space. Your mind needs that as well, I think, to be creative.
When you do need to work, where do you tend to do your best work? And can you describe that space?
Yeah, sure. So I recently, for the last, I think, 3 years maybe, I had been working from home on my own, and I sort of would set up at the kitchen table, but, most of my days would involve me getting very distracted and cleaning the house, just going off and doing other things. And at the time, because didn't really have anything to compare it to, I kind of thought that it was, not a bad setup. As everyone thinks about working from home, you can literally sit in your pajamas, but after about a month, it's not quite so productive and ideal as people imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm working in a sort of shared office space with about 10 other people. So we've got a couple of other graphic designers, another illustrator, two photographers and a videographer, and then a mix of other people, so like someone who's doing a PhD, someone who runs a surf website. So it's a really great little mix, and it kind of feels like there's a real buzz there at the moment. My workspace is just a small desk. I've got a plant on there for a bit of greenery to look at when I'm gazing into the distance.
It sounds like it's a pretty good setup, and it sounds like there's probably a lot more room to, like, you know, get sort of the creative juices flowing with other people around you as well, and kind of bounce ideas off one another as well.
I've found it to be really inspiring in that way. I think it's easy if you're working in a creative field. Sometimes you get into ruts, or what feels like a rut, and it's kind of encouraging to work with other people who are similarly passionate about whatever their creative outlet is, but also sort of realise as well that there's a bit of up and down to it, and being able to kind of share that with other people who are in a similar position has been really good, and also just sharing ideas or going, have you checked out this artist or this photographer? And everyone likes great music too, so it's good.
I also asked Kiara to tell me a bit about the kind of music that gets her in the mood for being creative.
I've been listening to a lot of Van Morrison lately at work. When it's been raining, it kind of just has suited it, and it's kind of sets a pretty smooth tone for the day.
Yeah.
And also a really great artist that some friends at work showed me called Bill Callahan, who just, has some amazing lyrics that, really inspire some interesting images as well. And even things like instrumental sort of tracks, like the soundtrack to The Untouchables is really, really great. I don't know what you'd call that whole collection, but basically pretty mellow, but maybe a little bit melancholic kind of.
Why do you do what you do? What got you into illustration and graphic design, and why do you continue to do it?
I guess I got into it almost by what feels like, not mistake, but I didn't really intend to get into graphic design. Like I had always thought that I would sort of pursue journalism, writing. I did start off studying journalism at uni, and then, I don't know, just in the background, like I wasn't really enjoying it. It wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. And I, felt a bit lost after that first year, thinking it wasn't really my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And I had always really enjoyed, like, my dad is an illustrator, and a really talented artist, and I'd always enjoyed watching him.
Yeah.
And he had kind of taught me a few things. I would often just sit and watch him, and he would sort of talk me through how do you set up an illustration, and I really, enjoyed that a lot. And, even taking photos and painting, I always liked that, but I sort of didn't think of myself as the artist in our family, because we were all kind of assuming it was just a given.
Yeah.
I think I can't even remember how I chose graphic design, but I think Dad just said, like, you're really creative and you're really good at it. Like, why don't you give it a go, and you might like it. And I just really enjoyed it, and just found great people in my course, and just felt like it clicked. It's a privilege to be able to create for your work, and it can be used for so many things. Like, sometimes I have a bit of a moment where I'm like, why am I doing graphic design? Because it's just making things pretty. It's not really, hasn't really got a great, ultimate purpose or anything. But then, on the other hand, I have had a lot of opportunities where I've been able to help someone else who's doing something really good that I want to support, to kind of get their message out there in a really unique way, and that's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, you've got some really, like, in terms of your portfolio, you've got some great examples of where you've been able to collaborate with people from really different areas. Like, just from the top of my head, like, a lot of the stuff that you do, in relation to human rights specifically comes to mind, and also in terms of, education. And I think that, I imagine that would be quite rewarding.
It's spot on. That has been the most rewarding work by far. So one example, there's an organisation that I volunteered with like many years ago in Cambodia, and I was able to then follow up by doing some graphic design work for them and some illustrations. And in terms of education, probably my two most enjoyable and largest projects have been collaborating with Newcastle Uni on a mentoring program that they've got that sort of is about building literacy skills, but also about teaching kids to kind of aspire to further education or aspire to what they, ultimately want to do without feeling restricted or limited by like their socioeconomic situation. And that was really a challenging but really very enjoyable project to work on. So that sort of took the form of a children's book, first of all, like doing the illustrations for that, and then a similar sort of job for them creating like an e-book or a smartboard resource, which was really fun.
So one last question, and this is sort of about, people that inspire you, but I was wondering who you think, the world's best kept secret is in terms of, the industry that you're in, and, is there someone that you've come across that you think, wow, they've like really inspired my work and you're amazed that no one knows about them?
Yeah, I mean, it is, I feel like there are a few, like, I'm constantly having that moment where I'm like, how does no one know about this person? And someone that does come to mind is an illustrator called Grady McFerrin.
Grady McFerrin, yeah.
He, I think I found him because I was looking up some music posters that I'd really admired or been inspired by, and I realised that he had done like most of them. And he's just like, an incredible illustrator, like with a really distinct style, and also a very talented. I want to say letterer, but I don't know if that's actually a real word.
We can say letterer.
Lizzie Stewart is another she's a British illustrator who's also really talented, who's inspired a lot of my work as well. I almost feel like I have to be careful every time I look at her website that I don't like end up
get like talent envy kind of thing.
yeah, that, and also that I don't end up when I'm like down the track in a few weeks' time, like thinking that I've had this great idea, but it turns out that I've seen it on her website because it's so lodged in my brain. That's happened. And I bought some of her prints a few years ago, and Mum thought that I had drawn them because I had clearly borrowed so heavily from her. So she's pretty inspiring to me.
Well, I think that's everything that I wanted to ask you. So thanks so much for that. Really appreciate it. A big thank you again to Chiara Mucci, and I'll be back soon with more updates on this segment and on other parts of this website on Curiosity Mag. Thanks for joining us.